In a bustling corporate office, a janitor's quiet presence goes unnoticed, until one day, something happens that shifts the power dynamic in the room. When the CEO overhears the janitor speaking not just one, but 9 languages fluently, he's stunned. And what happens next will not only challenge his perception of the janitor, but also open a door to deeper racial prejudice that's been hiding in plain sight. This isn't just about language. It's about recognizing the hidden potential in those we often overlook. For years, Samuel Thompson worked as the janitor at a prestigious downtown corporation. He was an invisible man in the eyes of the high-powered executives, including the CEO, Richard Hayes, who only saw him as a part of the building's upkeep. Samuel's quiet efficiency earned him little attention, but he was comfortable in his role, never expecting more. Meanwhile, the office around him thrived with executives making decisions that impacted the world, while Samuel cleaned the spaces they left behind. He never complained. But there was something most didn't know. Samuel wasn't just a janitor. He had an extraordinary gift. He could speak 9 languages. He had learned them all on his own, out of passion for the cultures and stories they held. One day, while cleaning the CEO's office, he accidentally overheard a conversation between 2 executives discussing a merger. The 2 men switched languages in mid-sentence, unaware that Samuel could understand every word. As they spoke in a language that wasn't English, Samuel's mind raced with excitement. He knew it. In fact, he could understand every single language spoken in the office building. But it was that very moment when the CEO stepped into the room and heard Samuel casually speak back in fluent French that everything changed. Richard was stunned, almost speechless. He had no idea that Samuel possessed such skill. That brief moment of surprise would set off a chain of events that would force Richard and the entire office to confront their biases and the hidden talents that often go unnoticed. The next few days were a whirlwind. Samuel, normally invisible in the eyes of the corporate elite, suddenly became the subject of quiet conversations and curious glances. Richard, in particular, couldn't stop thinking about what he'd heard. He was both amazed and embarrassed. How could he have spent so many years in the same building, surrounded by someone so gifted and never once noticed? How many other people were he underestimating? The tension in the office began to shift. The higher-ups, who had always assumed they were the smartest, most capable individuals in the room, suddenly found themselves looking at Samuel with a new lens. Was this a man they'd underestimated, or was this a man who had simply chosen not to reveal his talents? Richard's curiosity began to grow. He sought out Samuel, but instead of simply offering a compliment or asking about his multilingual abilities, Richard began to probe deeper, without realizing the subtle racism that lurked in his approach. "Why didn't you share this with anyone?" Richard asked, sitting down across from Samuel in the break room. Samuel, ever humble, just shrugged. He wasn't looking for accolades, only the chance to do his job well. "I didn't think anyone cared," he said quietly. But the questions continued. Richard asked about his life story, his background, and how a janitor had acquired such an impressive array of languages. The more he asked, the more it became clear that Richard hadn't expected someone in Samuel's position to have such a rich, cultured background. His subtle assumptions were now fully exposed, and Samuel, ever aware of the class and racial dynamics at play, didn't answer every question. As the conversation continued, Richard began to feel the weight of his own ignorance. He realized that he'd never thought to ask these questions of people like Samuel before. He had assumed, based on their positions, that they had no depth or experiences to share. As the days went on, tension built up in the office. Samuel's presence had caused a stir, but Richard was still grappling with his own feelings of guilt. Meanwhile, Samuel, ever the quiet observer, noticed the shift in the office's energy. There were whispers, but also a growing respect for him that hadn't existed before. Yet there was also a rising discomfort in the air, as colleagues began to question why a janitor would be so talented. Could it really be true? Richard, uncomfortable with his own position in the company and the shifting power dynamics, started to watch Samuel more closely. One day during a high-stakes board meeting, Richard snapped, When Samuel passed by, the CEO, struggling to make his point, addressed him, not as a janitor, but as a peer. He asked Samuel for his perspective on a matter concerning international expansion. The room froze. The board members, so used to Richard's authoritative control, were stunned. Samuel, in the quietest of voices, shared his insights, surprisingly practical and nuanced, drawing from his deep understanding of the cultures and languages he knew so well. In that moment, Richard, his colleagues, and even Samuel realized the power of recognition, of seeing beyond positions, labels, and assumptions. Samuel wasn't just the janitor. He was someone whose experiences had shaped him into a wealth of knowledge, and yet, for years, he had been overlooked. The shift was undeniable. Samuel, once relegated to the background, became the center of attention. Richard, realizing how deeply ingrained his biases had been, made a decision that would change the trajectory of his own company. He offered Samuel a chance to step out of the janitor's closet and into a higher role, not just for his multilingual skills, but for the value he brought to the team's diversity of thought. This gesture stunned the office, and many employees, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, saw it as a victory for recognition and equality. Richard's action wasn't just about giving Samuel a promotion. It was a symbol of dismantling long-held assumptions about who belongs at the table. It wasn't just about one janitor. This was a reflection of a systemic issue in corporate culture, where talent is often hidden under assumptions. As Richard made the announcement to the office, the employees were left with a powerful message. True potential isn't always where you expect it to be. Sometimes it's hidden beneath assumptions, overlooked because of racial bias, and missed because of our inability to look beyond surface-level titles and roles. And perhaps the true measure of a leader is not how they rise to the top, but how they elevate others. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. How do you think we can better recognize talent in the workplace? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters.